He smiled at me like everything was perfect. Barbecue smoke, laughter, family photos. But while his lips touched mine for the cameras, his other hand was wiring $20,000 to his mistress. That betrayal didn't break me. It woke me up. My name is Denise Carter, and before I tell you how I froze my husband's accounts before dessert, tell me, where are you watching from? I love knowing where my stories travel, whose kitchen or living room my voice reaches tonight. Drop it in the comments below. Now, let's go back to that Sunday. The day everything looked perfect on the outside and quietly began to rot underneath. That morning, sunlight poured through the kitchen window, landing right on the glass dish of baked beans cooling by the sink. I was humming along to an old Anita Baker song, moving from stove to counter, brushing sauce over ribs like I'd done every summer for 22 years. Marcus was outside already, beer in hand, spatula twirling like he was on a cooking show. He'd invited everyone, cousins, neighbors, business partners, the kind of people who still thought we were the couple that had it all. And maybe, for a while, we did. We built a good life together. He ran a construction company. I managed the home, the bills, the holidays, the small but meaningful details that glue a marriage together. People always said, "You two are solid. Marcus adores you." And I believed it. Or maybe I needed to believe it. Lately, though, something had changed. His phone, once carelessly left on the table, was now locked with a passcode. He'd started using cologne I didn't recognize. And there was a softness in his voice sometimes. Not for me, but for whoever was on the other end of those late-night calls he said were just business. Still, I tried to silence the voice in my head. I told myself, "Denise, don't be paranoid. You're almost 50. Your kids are grown. Life is good. Don't ruin it with suspicion." By noon, our backyard looked like a picture from a Southern Living magazine. Tables covered with checkered cloths, lemon water glistening in glass pitchers, music playing low through the speakers Marcus had just bought. He liked things to look good. That was always his thing, appearances. I remember wiping my hands on my apron and stepping outside, breathing in that mix of smoke, grilled meat, and sweet corn. Our daughter, Tasha, was chasing her son around with a water gun. My son, Ryan, was helping his dad by the grill, laughing like the old days. For a moment, I forgot the tension. I let myself believe everything was fine. Marcus looked over at me and smiled that charming, practiced smile, the one that could win over anyone. "Baby, come on over here. Family photo time," he called, arms stretched out like the proud husband he played so well. I walked over, laughing for the camera. His hand found my waist, firm and familiar. The click of the phone camera froze us in time. Happy, together, successful. Then I saw it. A soft buzz from his smartwatch, just a flash of text before it faded. "Got the transfer, miss you already." My heart stopped. My face didn't move. Years of keeping composure in public trained me well. The camera clicked again. Everyone cheered, oblivious. Marcus turned his head slightly, pressing a kiss to my cheek. To anyone watching, we looked perfect. But inside, something shattered quietly, almost politely, like fine glass under pressure. I excused myself, went inside to check the desserts. My hands were trembling so bad I had to grip the counter just to steady myself. Outside, the laughter rolled on. Someone turned up the music. The smell of ribs filled the air, and I stood there in my spotless kitchen, realizing I was living inside a photograph. One staged for everyone else to admire, while behind the frame, everything was starting to fall apart. That was the last perfect Sunday we ever had. I didn't know it then, I'd tell myself later, but that phone call was the start of everything unraveling. If you asked anyone who Marcus Carter was, they'd tell you he was the man every woman wanted and every man wanted to be. Handsome, confident, smooth-talking, a provider, a leader, the kind of man who could walk into a room and make everyone feel seen, except somehow the woman standing right beside him. For years, I wore that image like jewelry. "Denise, you're lucky," people would say. "That man worships you." I used to smile, say thank you, and pretend it was true. But lately, I'd started to feel like a prop in someone else's performance. After the barbecue photo, I spent the rest of the afternoon in a strange haze, smiling, serving food, laughing in all the right places. I could hear my own voice, bright and cheerful, but it didn't sound like me. It was like watching someone else wear my skin. Marcus was in his element, telling jokes by the grill, clapping his business partner on the back, teasing the younger cousins. He thrived on admiration, that constant stream of attention he could soak in like sunlight. When people asked him about work, he'd flash that confident grin. "You know me, always hustling. Got this new expansion coming up, maybe even Miami." Miami. That word made something twist in my stomach. It was the same city that had popped up on one of those business trips a few weeks ago. 3 days gone. No photos, no receipts, just stories. Still, I smiled, poured lemonade for the guests, pretended. The truth is, denial is a powerful drug, especially for women like me who've spent decades building families, not fantasies. You learn to convince yourself that love is patience, that silence is peace, that trust means ignoring what hurts. But when I caught that message flash across his smartwatch earlier, "Got the transfer, miss you already," something inside me cracked, open. After dessert, I was stacking plates when I saw him standing alone near the fence, talking quietly on his phone. His tone was soft, too soft. He looked happy in a way I hadn't seen in months. I froze by the kitchen window, hidden by the curtains. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. His smile said enough. When he finally hung up, he stayed there a moment, that dreamy look still lingering, then slipped his phone back in his pocket and joined the guests again, laughing like nothing had happened. I turned back to the sink, gripping the edge until my knuckles went white. "Denise, honey, you all right?" It was my sister-in-law, Regina, peeking in. I forced a smile. "Just tired, you know these gatherings." She chuckled, poured herself a glass of sweet tea. "You and Marcus still the dream team. 20-something years and y'all still holding it down. I swear, you make it look easy." Easy. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I nodded. "Yeah, we try." Later that night, when everyone was gone and the house smelled faintly of smoke and cologne, I watched Marcus sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone, smiling faintly. I said, "You had a good time today?" He glanced up. "Yeah, of course. You did great, baby. Food was perfect as always." He leaned over, kissed my forehead, then went right back to his screen. I studied his face, that smooth confidence, that same expression he wore when lying to clients, when promising things he couldn't deliver. I'd seen that look before. I just never thought it would be turned on me. When he went to shower, I sat down at the dining table, surrounded by empty glasses and leftover crumbs. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. I unlocked my phone, opened our banking app, the one I rarely checked because Marcus handled all the finances. And there it was, the same amount I saw in that message, $20,000, sent out just the day before. Recipient, T. Lane. Description, consulting services. I stared at it, my mouth dry. My heart didn't race. It just went still. I scrolled back. There were others. Smaller transfers, always neat, spaced out, buried between bills and investments. My body felt cold. Betrayal has a temperature, and it isn't fire, it's ice. I took a screenshot, then another, printed them from the wireless printer right beside the table. For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the shower running upstairs, my hands resting on the pages that proved what I already knew. When Marcus came down later, fresh and smiling, he looked at me and said, "Why are you still up, baby?" I smiled faintly, folded the papers and said, "Just finishing a few things." He kissed my cheek again before heading to bed, and that's when I realized sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's preparation. That night, I opened our joint banking app, and my world tilted. When you've loved someone for over 2 decades, betrayal doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It slips in quietly, wearing the same voice that once promised forever. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of our bed, watching Marcus breathe, phone charging on his nightstand, the faint hum of the air conditioner filling the silence between us. I kept wondering, how long had I been sharing a bed with a stranger? At 3 a.m., I crept downstairs, turned on the dim kitchen light, and opened my laptop. The screen's glow felt harsh against the dark. I logged into our joint account again, heart steady but heavy. It wasn't just one transaction. There were 6, all within the last 3 months. $20,000 here, $3,200 there. A consulting fee, contract retainer, travel expense. Each one dressed in the same professional disguise. Tidy lies meant to hide something rotten. The name T. Lane appeared more than once. I clicked the details. Miami address, Miami. Again. My hand trembled slightly as I pulled a notepad closer, writing down every date, every amount. The kind of woman I was, detail-oriented, organized, that part of me took over, even while my heart fractured. It's strange. Betrayal doesn't always come with rage. Sometimes it arrives with clarity, cold, calm, surgical. By the time the sun began to rise, I had printed the bank statements and highlighted every transaction tied to that name. I slipped them into a folder and placed it inside the drawer where I used to keep birthday cards and love notes from Marcus. Now it held evidence. The next morning, Marcus came down the stairs, still half asleep, still confident. "You're up early," he said, stretching. I smiled faintly. "Couldn't sleep. Coffee?" He nodded, kissed the top of my head, and sat at the table scrolling through his phone. I watched him sip his coffee. That same casual ease, that same familiar rhythm. And I wondered how many mornings I'd poured that cup for a man living a double life. When he left for work, I didn't cry. I went straight to my dresser, took out my mother's old notebook, and began writing everything I remembered. The late calls, the cologne, the softness in his voice. If there was one thing my mother taught me, it was this. Write it down, baby. The truth's got a way of getting lost in emotion. That evening, Marcus texted me. "Dinner with a client. Don't wait up. Love you, love you." 2 words that used to mean home. Now they felt like a lie signed with a smile. I didn't respond. I opened my laptop again, this time checking our savings account. And that's when I saw it. He'd just moved another $5,000 out that very afternoon. I stared at the timestamp. It was during our family barbecue. He'd wired money while kissing me for the cameras. The cruelty of that realization wasn't loud. It was quiet, precise. Like a needle threading humiliation through memory, I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, and whispered to myself, "You picked the wrong woman to underestimate." The next morning, I called our bank. I'd worked part-time there years ago, so I still knew the system and the tone that made people move quickly. "Good morning, this is Denise Carter. I need to review some irregular account activity." I spoke calmly, professionally. The woman on the other end pulled up the file and confirmed the transfers. I asked her to mark them for review, citing possible fraud, and I requested paper statements mailed directly to me. Before hanging up, I asked her one more thing. If I wanted to temporarily restrict joint access, say due to unauthorized transactions, what would that require? Her voice hesitated. "Mrs. Carter, we can place a temporary freeze while it's under investigation." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Perfect. Let's do that." That night, Marcus came home later than usual. He smelled faintly of ocean air, that same Miami cologne. He kissed my cheek, oblivious. "Bank called today," he said casually. "They said there's some hold on our account. You know anything about that?" I turned from the stove, met his eyes, and said softly, "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding." Then I smiled, the same smile he used to lie to me. By morning, I had a plan, not for revenge, but for survival. The thing about betrayal is, It teaches you a new kind of quiet. Not the peaceful kind that comes after a good day, but the kind that hums in your bones while you're planning how to survive what someone else thought would destroy you. That Monday morning, I woke before dawn. The air was still, heavy with that gray silence before sunrise. Marcus was still asleep beside me, phone face down as always. I stood there for a moment just looking at him, this man I'd loved, fed, defended, built a life with, and felt nothing. Not hate, not love, just a clean, sharp stillness. I got dressed, grabbed my purse, and drove to the bank. The branch opened at 8. I was waiting in the parking lot by 7:45, folder of statements tucked under my arm, the same folder that used to hold our family vacation photos. When the doors opened, I walked in with purpose. "Good morning," I said to the teller. "I'd like to speak with someone about possible unauthorized activity on a joint account." They led me to a glass office where a woman named Carla greeted me with a polite smile. I could see the way her expression shifted as she flipped through the pages I handed her. The highlighted transactions, the Miami address, the matching timestamps. "Mrs. Carter, I see why you're concerned," she said softly. "I need the account temporarily frozen," I told her. "All joint cards suspended until further notice. There's an ongoing review and I don't want any funds leaving without my authorization." She hesitated. "Do you suspect fraud?" I met her eyes. "Something worse." She nodded. Within minutes, she'd restricted online access and placed a flag for investigation. I transferred half of what remained, my share, into a new account under my name only. It wasn't just money, it was oxygen. By the time I left the bank, I felt the faintest flicker of relief. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting. I was acting. And Marcus called 3 times before I even got home. I didn't answer. I wanted him to stew in confusion a little longer. When I finally pulled into the driveway, he was standing outside by his car, phone in hand, jaw tight. "Denise, what's going on? My card's not working. The business account's locked. Did you mess with the bank?" I stepped out calmly, grocery bags in one hand. "Good morning to you, too." "Don't play dumb," he snapped. "They said the freeze came from your end." I tilted my head. "Maybe there's been some unauthorized activity. You should be more careful." He blinked. "Unauthorized activity? What the hell does that mean?" I gave him a slow, practiced smile. "I'm sure they'll sort it out soon." Then I brushed past him, went inside, and began unpacking groceries like nothing had happened. He followed me, still barking questions. "Denise, this isn't funny. I have business expenses due today." I didn't look up. "Then maybe you should have thought twice before wiring money out of our account during a barbecue." His voice faltered. "What?" I turned to him finally, steady and quiet. "You heard me." His mouth opened, then closed. He didn't know whether to deny or defend. His eyes darted, searching my face for how much I knew. I just smiled again, the kind of smile that says, "Try me." "Dinner's at 7, I said softly. "Don't be late." That night, he barely spoke. I could feel him watching me across the table, trying to read me. But I'd learned something powerful in that silence. Control doesn't always need noise. I went to bed early, leaving him downstairs pacing with his phone. He called someone quietly, thinking I couldn't hear. But I caught a few words. "Freeze, my mistake, well, she knows." I closed my eyes, satisfied. The next day I started moving funds, securing the house, changing account access, locking every digital door he'd ever walked through. I wasn't just freezing money, I was freezing his power over me. But then came the message that confirmed who she was and what I had to do next. By Wednesday morning, the silence between Marcus and me had turned into a thick fog, the kind that hangs in the air long after a storm, heavy and unspoken. He tried to act normal, humming while making coffee, glancing at me with forced calm. But I could see the panic flickering behind his eyes. He didn't know how much I knew, and I wasn't about to tell him. I let him sit in that uncertainty, let him wonder which lie had betrayed him. Because sometimes silence makes the guilty scream louder than words ever could. That afternoon, I was sitting in the living room with my laptop when a notification blinked across my screen. A new message request on social media. Normally, I'd ignore it, but the preview caught my eye. "You don't know me, but you should see this." Curiosity and dread warred in my chest. I clicked. The message was from a man named Eli Turner. He'd attached screenshots, dozens of them. Marcus and a young woman, arms around each other in a hotel pool, selfies on a Miami balcony, text threads filled with hearts and hotel room numbers. My breath caught as I scrolled. There was one photo that stopped me cold. Marcus kissing her forehead in front of a rental car, his hand on her waist like he used to hold mine. Eli's message continued. "Her name's Tiffany Lane. She told me she was single. We were together until I found out about your husband. Thought you deserved to know what kind of man you're married to." I sat back, staring at her face. 20-something, perfect skin, the kind of beauty that thought it would last forever. And Marcus, God, the way he looked at her. That soft, stupid adoration that used to belong to me. My first instinct was to throw the laptop across the room. My second was to thank Eli. Instead, I took a long breath, wiped my eyes, and whispered to myself, "All right, Denise, now you know." I didn't reply right away. I saved every photo, every screenshot, and printed them out, methodical, organized, detached. I added them to the same folder that already held the bank statements. The truth was stacking up, paper by paper, like bricks in a wall I was building between the woman I'd been and the woman I was becoming. Later that night, Marcus came home with flowers, cheap ones, the kind you buy from a gas station when guilt eats your conscience raw. He placed them on the counter. "Thought I'd surprise you." I looked at them. Wilted edges, faded color. They reminded me of us. "How thoughtful," I said quietly, turning back to my pot roast. He tried to wrap his arms around me. "You've been distant lately. Everything okay?" I laughed softly. "Everything's perfect, Marcus." He hesitated, then kissed my cheek and walked away. I watched his reflection in the kitchen window, the confident stride, the mask he wore even at home. That's when it hit me. He wasn't afraid yet. He still thought he could control the narrative. I decided right then that if he wanted a show, I'd give him one he'd never forget. Over the next few days, I gathered what I needed. I met quietly with an old friend, a lawyer I trusted, and asked what I could legally do to protect myself. He told me how to document everything, how to ensure he couldn't hide assets. I followed every word of that advice. I wasn't rushing toward revenge. I was building the foundation of my freedom. Then one night, Eli messaged again. "She's been bragging, said Marcus is leaving you soon. They've got plans. Miami in 2 weeks. Thought you'd want to know." I read that line twice, then smiled. "Perfect timing," I whispered, because in 2 weeks we were hosting our family dinner, a Carter tradition, the same event Marcus loved to turn into his performance of success and devotion. This time, I was going to let him play his part one last time, before I brought the curtain down myself. Our next family dinner was coming up, and I decided it would be the last one he'd host as my husband. 2 weeks. That's how long I waited. 2 long, deliberate weeks where I smiled, cooked, folded his shirts, and let him believe life was settling back into rhythm. He thought the storm had passed, but he didn't know I was standing in its eye. Calm, quiet, and ready. The night of the family dinner arrived on a warm Saturday, golden light spilling through the dining room curtains. I wore a navy blue dress Marcus had once said made me look elegant. I chose it on purpose, not for him, but for the woman I used to be. The woman who'd served and smiled and swallowed her own anger until it turned to acid. Marcus was downstairs early, lighting candles and adjusting place settings like some doting husband from a commercial. "Everything looks perfect, baby," he said, planting a kiss on my cheek. "We make a great team, don't we?" I smiled. "We sure do." He didn't notice how steady my voice was. Family started arriving around 6. Laughter, hugs, the smell of roast chicken and peach cobbler. My daughter Tasha brought flowers. My son Ryan brought wine. Everyone loved coming here. Marcus made sure of that. He played the charming host, moving from guest to guest, pouring drinks, telling stories about business deals and vacation plans. "Next time," he said, "we're taking a trip to Miami. Gonna show Denise some real sunshine." I almost laughed. He really didn't see it coming. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself to the kitchen. That's when I made a quiet phone call. One I'd arranged days earlier. "Evening, this is Mrs. Carter. You can go ahead and drop by now." 5 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Marcus looked up, surprised. "Expecting someone?" he asked. "Just a couple of guests you'll remember," I said. In walked Calvin, our longtime banker, and Evelyn Shaw, the attorney I'd been meeting in secret. Marcus's expression faltered. What's this about?" I set a stack of documents neatly on the table between the wine glasses and dinner plates. "You like handling things publicly, Marcus. I figured we'd keep that tradition alive." The room went quiet. Even the soft music seemed to hold its breath. Calvin looked uncomfortable, but professional. "Marcus, we received your wife's authorization to review all joint financial activity. There appear to be multiple large transfers to a Miss Tiffany Lane." My children looked confused. "Mom," Tasha whispered. Marcus's face drained of color. "That's business, just work payments." I slid one of the printed photos across the table. Marcus and Tiffany, arm in arm in Miami, both smiling at the camera. "Consulting work looks different these days," I said quietly. Ryan stood. "Dad, what is this?" Marcus opened his mouth, stammering, reaching for excuses that no longer existed. "It's not what it looks like." "Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like," I interrupted. "You wired $20,000 to your mistress while kissing me for the cameras at our barbecue. You spent our savings trying to impress a woman who's half my age, while I was home cooking ribs for your family." The silence that followed was deafening. He finally exploded. "You're humiliating me." I looked him dead in the eye. "No, Marcus, you did that yourself. I'm just making sure the lights are on while it happens." He tried to leave, but Calvin spoke up. "Your accounts are temporarily frozen pending investigation. Any attempt to move funds will be flagged." Marcus turned toward me, disbelief in his face. "You did this?" I nodded once. "Before dessert." The rest of the night unfolded like slow theater. No shouting, no chaos, just the quiet collapse of a man's illusions. Tasha gathered her son and left early. Ryan said nothing, just stared at his father with that look of deep disappointment only a son can give. Marcus stood alone by the window when I finally spoke one last time. "You built a house on lies, Marcus. Don't be surprised when the foundation gives way." Then I grabbed my purse, my keys, and walked out into the night. Behind me, I heard the sound of glass shattering. Maybe a wine glass, maybe something deeper. I didn't look back. And then I stood up, walked away, leaving him with the check. When I left that night, I didn't take much, just my purse, my keys, and the peace that comes when you finally stop pretending. The air outside was cool, sharp against my face. I remember the sound of my heels on the driveway, steady, unhurried. Each step felt like reclaiming something he'd quietly taken from me over the years. I drove to my daughter's house and stayed the night. Tasha didn't ask many questions. She just opened the door, pulled me into her arms, and said, "You're safe here, Mom." That was all I needed to hear. The next few days were a blur of paperwork, calls, and calm determination. I contacted the lawyer, Evelyn, and we began the separation process. I learned that half of everything he'd built still had my name on it, including the house, the vehicles, and yes, the business accounts he'd been so confident were his alone. Marcus tried to call. At first it was anger. "You're ruining everything we built." Then guilt. "Denise, we can fix this. It didn't mean anything." And finally, desperation. "Please, Don't do this to me. But what he never understood was, he already had. A week later, I met him one last time at the lawyer's office. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in presence. The confidence that once filled every room he walked into was gone. He said, "I made a mistake." I looked him straight in the eye. "No, Marcus, you made a choice, more than once." He tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled it back. There was no anger left in me, just exhaustion. "You wanted control, Marcus. You always needed to be the man on top, the one with power. But here's the thing. Real power isn't about money. It's about peace. And I finally have mine." Evelyn slid the papers forward. I signed them slowly, deliberately. He hesitated before signing his. His hand shook. When it was done, I gathered my things, thanked Evelyn, and left. No tears, no scene. Just quiet finality. That evening, I drove by the old house. The lights were on, but it didn't feel like home anymore. I thought of all the dinners, the laughter, the years I spent waiting for him to see me. Really see me. He never did. And that was okay now. I rented a small cottage on the edge of town, near a lake. It wasn't big, but it was mine. The first morning there, I made coffee and sat by the window watching the sun rise over the water. The world looked new, like it was giving me permission to start over. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't anyone's wife. I wasn't pretending. I was just Denise. A few weeks later, a letter arrived from the bank. The investigation was complete. Marcus's consulting payments had been flagged as personal misuse of joint funds. I'd be reimbursed for every dollar. I smiled and placed the letter in a drawer. Justice doesn't always come with drama. Sometimes it comes with paperwork. Eli, the man who had messaged me about Tiffany, reached out again just to say he was glad I'd found peace. I thanked him. We never spoke again, but his honesty gave me the truth I needed. As for Tiffany, she vanished as quickly as she'd appeared. I didn't need revenge against her. The kind of woman who builds her life on borrowed lies eventually collapses under their weight. Months later, I hosted a small cookout by my lake house. Just me, Tasha, Ryan, and the grandkids. The smell of barbecue drifted through the air, mingling with laughter. For a moment, I closed my eyes and let the memory of that other barbecue, the one that started it all, fade into the distance. I realized something then. Betrayal doesn't end your story. It just edits who deserves to stay in it. As the coals burned low and the kids chased fireflies in the dark, I whispered to myself, sometimes you don't burn bridges out of anger. You burn them for light. And for the first time in years, I felt free.